All right. Hello, everyone. Today we're speaking with Ryan Collister, who is one of the resource specialists at Government Canyon State Natural Area. Hi, Ryan.
Hello.
And we are going to be discussing the endangered songbird, the Golden Cheeked Warbler. Just to give a little bit of information about this natural area, Government Canyon State Natural Area is one of Texas's most ecological significant protected areas, located in the outskirts of San Antonio, Texas. This natural area, which encompasses over 12,000 acres of the Edwards Plateau and Hill Country ecosystems, and is also managed by the Texas Park and Wildlife Department. The focus of this interview is to learn more about the Golden Cheek Warbler, the conservation plan, and the challenges associated with achieving sustained success. In addition to the warbler, the natural area supports a variety of wildlife species and offers critical watershed protection for the Edwards Aquifer, San Antonio's primary water source. The area also serves the public through various recreational opportunities, including hiking, educational programs, and bird watching. So we'll begin with the questions, Ryan. First, to start with, can you describe your role in wild conservation at the state natural area?
Yeah, and very well summarized, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
so my job as one of the two resource specialists, the other one, her name is Lindsay White. Our job is to manage natural and cultural resources at Government Canyon. So it's about 5% cultural, 95% natural. So the cultural stuff includes like some historical structures, some artifacts, and there's some stuff with our caves and karst systems as well that has to do with the Native Americans that lived here. But most of our job is managing natural resources, so that includes all the plants, animals, wildlife, water, as you said. Um, and the goal of the natural resources program in the state parks is to restore as much of the habitat as we can to a pre-European settlement condition, or as close to it as we can, because there's centuries of various types of habitat degradation, fire suppression, overgrazing, invasive species, all kinds of stuff. So we sort of have a rotating calendar of projects that go throughout the year. So like in spring, we're working on golden cheeked warblers a lot, trapping for brown-headed cowbirds, um, working on a lot of invasive plant control during the growing season.
Yeah,
This summer, we kind of switch into like pig trapping. Um, Fall brings the hunts. We do public hunts here, which is our huge deal, takes up a lot of our time. Um, Winter also brings in a second pig trapping season. A lot of trail work during winter because it's colder out. We can get volunteers out here a lot, and we do wrangle hundreds of volunteers a year, so that's a major part of our job as well.
cool.
Um,
Point, discuss a little bit about the pig trapping. Are these feral
mhm.
hogs that you're trapping?
Yep, feral hogs. They've been established in Texas for many decades now. Their range and populations have grown exponentially in the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So Lindsay and I are actually new to this position. We started in July, and I come from a zoo background. She comes from an ecology background, um, with a bit of other stuff on the side. So, um, we're both learning as we go with a lot of these land management techniques, but we're sort of picking up from where the previous resource specialist left off, um, and seeing, we're reevaluating each project as they come in the calendar year. Like, all right, it's pig trapping season, so how are we going to do this different? Does it need to be done different? How have the results been in the past? So, um, the previous people used to focus on like single pigs at a time or small groups,
Yeah.
which is not very effective at a population level. And
Yeah.
they were using a corral style trap with a tripwire type thing.
Mhm.
But we're switching to a new type of trap called a pig brig, which is basically a big net that's shaped like a bowl. So the pigs come under the net and then they can't go out of the net because it's a bowl with a hole at the bottom. So, then we show up and dispatch them. So I'm looking forward to my first attempt at that pretty soon here. The net is on the way. It's been ordered. So I'm very excited and getting my all my ducks in a row before we start that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something we'll have to discuss. Told Lindsay that maybe I could come shadow you guys just to see what y'all do on your, on a daily basis. That kind of stuff's very interesting to me, and I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do with my degree when I'm done. So I'll have to get with you on that so I
Yeah.
can maybe volunteer and help you guys.
Yeah, please do. We have I haven't put out the official call yet for volunteers, but I will in the next week or two is my goal. I'm basically making a schedule of the summer trapping season and the winter trapping season and trying to put a volunteer or myself on each every single day to check traps.
Cool.
Um, and then when it's actually time to dispatch stuff, any interested volunteers are happy to tag along. They just can't pull the trigger. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's going to be pretty labor intensive at first. So I'm going to be looking for help getting the traps actually set up, which you're welcome to do as well. So yeah, let's talk about it later if you like.
Yeah, I would. I'm very interested in that. So I'll get with you so maybe I can come out and help you guys when you're
Yeah,
ready to do that.
yeah, shoot me an email. There's just some paperwork on the front side that has to go
Yep.
in first, but it takes like 2, 3 weeks.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
So, what now we're going to talk a little bit about habitat and ecology, the warbler. What ecological characteristics of the government canyon make it a prime habitat for the golden cheek warbler?
So they only nest in the Texas Hill Country. So roughly Austin to San Antonio to not almost the Del Rio area on the excuse me on the Edwards Plateau. So they need a mature oak juniper woodland with the right sort of composition of trees. So at least for the ideal for high concentrations of birds. So um, in the hill country, you do see a lot of people clearing their juniper, 100% clear, which is no bueno. You also see a lot of the opposite, where people aren't doing any habitat management and the juniper takes over. So it's a native species. It's a very controversial tree around here. People hate it, but it's native. Its main habitat is to be on those hillsides. So it's stabilizing the hillsides with a little bit here on top of the hill, and then very few, if any, at the bottom of the hill in
Right.
those floodplains and stuff in between the hills. So, but with overgrazing and fire suppression, it does take over those other habitat types, and can push out other trees that are supposed to live with it. So oaks, persimmons, madrones, stuff like that. But Government Canyon, for the most part, has pretty healthy habitat composition already. Um, it hasn't been large chunks of it have not been developed or grazed. There are exceptions, but we have a pretty healthy natural composition of those tree species. Oh, sorry, that's my phone going off. Um, Mute that. There you go. So that's the main thing, is just amount of habitat. We have 13,000 acres. Each bird, I think it's a territory of 100 acres that they need per nesting pair. Don't quote me on that exact number, but I think I'm in the right ballpark. And so we can support a pretty high density population. Like if you go on a hike here, you'll probably hear, I don't know, 5 to 20 golden cheeked warblers singing, depending on where you go. Um, and there's also the cowbird trapping, which I think we probably will talk about later a bit more, which helps a lot with the success of nesting pairs.
Cool. So, now talk a little bit about the management plan. What are the key goals of the Golden Cheek Warbler management plan at the Government Canyon?
So we want to, maintain that habitat quality that we have. Um, Now that's going to come through, and that maintaining that habitat is not just for the golden cheeked warbler. We're maintaining that habitat quality for all the wildlife here,
Right.
um, and to maintain the recharge zone as well for the aquifer. Um, so there's a lot of projects that are meant to be to have multiple effects. And the golden cheeked warbler is an umbrella species, which is a term you hear a lot with endangered species. Um, Managing for an endangered species can also benefit a lot of other species in that community who have similar needs, but may not be officially endangered species yet. So maybe they're on their way, or they're important for other reasons. So. Um, but as far as our management goes, the feral hogs, that does come into play. The hogs are eating a lot of acorns and seedling plants that are going to struggle to come up and revegetate the forest as it naturally, things die and decay. And if the pigs are just rooting through and eating all the young stuff trying to come up, then it's going to become more juniper, too much juniper.
Yeah.
And for cowbird trapping, so we trap for the brown-headed cowbird, which is a nest parasite, which means it doesn't eat any of the birds or eggs or anything, but it will find a bird nest. It could be a cardinal, a mockingbird, golden cheeked warbler, black-cap vireos, which are another endangered bird here.
Mhm.
They really favor the vireos. But they'll land in that nest and either kick the eggs off or lay their own eggs, which then hatch and then kick the eggs off.
Yeah.
And they will the birds that keep that nest that are trying to raise eggs in that nest will raise the cowbirds instead. Um, most birds have a really strong motherly instinct, so they'll just raise whatever is in that nest, and if it's egg shaped, they're gonna buy it. So um, and there is some interesting ecology there, like the question for a long time was whether they were, kind of not smart enough to figure out that they're cowbirds, or if they were scared of retaliation by the cowbirds if they don't raise the babies, which
Yeah.
I think is a theory that's gaining some legs, which I think is pretty interesting. They call it like a mob or a mafia scenario. Um, but so anyway, we put out traps for the cowbirds. They're basically big, like 10-foot cubes of mesh with a metal slot in the top
Hmm.
uh, that the birds will hop through and can't hop out. So they're attracted to the food and water we put in there and to the bait birds. So we actually have a guy, he works at Fort Cavazos, who traps cowbirds outside of the trapping season,
Hmm.
the normal season, and uses them as bait birds to hand out to other sites. So they're attracted to their own kind, especially males that sing a lot. We'll load up the trap with a bunch of males, and food and water and shade. Of course, it's humane. They
Yeah.
have room. They have room to get out of the sun and stretch their wings and stuff. So we'll have anywhere from five to 30 birds in a trap, depending on how long it's been sitting for. And then once
Wow.
they start to get kind of chock full, where it's hard to count, because obviously we have to do daily counts for Fish and Wildlife to maintain our permits.
Yeah.
Um, if it's too hard to do a daily count, or we're getting to the end of the season, then we dispatch them, which is basically a particular type of hold where you just pull and twist.
Interesting.
But you have to do it just right.
Yeah.
Um, so I believe last year was the first year that no nest parasitism was seen in our black-cap vireo nesting area.
Cool.
So that's been a really big help to unlisting the black-cap vireo as endangered,
Yeah.
and seems to be contributing to a downlisting of the golden cheeked warbler. So right now it's federally threatened. It's going
Mm.
to get bumped down to, or sorry, it's federally endangered, and it's probably going to get bumped down to federally threatened.
Right.
And the cowbird trapping and the habitat management has played a large part in that. So they seem to be recovering based on the data that they've been collecting around Texas.
Great. That sounds great. Explain a little bit how trail closures during the breeding season help protect the warblers.
Yeah, so we close our trails in what's called the protected habitat area. So if you look at any of our basic trail maps that we hand out to people, if you look in the northeast corner, there's a big, like, shaded in gray area. That's we call it the ProHab for short. So it's got three different trails up there. Probably, I don't have the exact number, maybe 10 to 15 miles of trails up
Oh,
there. And it's only accessible from the rest of the trail system. So you have to hike up to it
yeah.
about 5-ish miles to get into it at all. Um, so part of the deed restriction when we acquired that property, I think it was the second property we acquired. The original 4,000 acres was the 90s. So I think this one came in like the early 2000s, and now we have like I don't know, a dozen or so different properties that we've assimilated. But anyway, so part of the deed restriction of this one was to close it from March to August. That's the whole nesting and fledging season, and not even the nesting season. It's the whole like arrival, territory establishing, pair meetups, nest building, egg laying, and baby raising, and then fledging. So you want to give them that full length of time to do their thing. Now, there's lots of evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, to suggest that they don't mind disturbance as too much. It's still in the deed restriction for that property, so we are unable to ever leave those trails open year round.
Yeah.
Um, but we have one that nests like just around the corner from my office, right next to a picnic area.
Oh, wow.
Comes back every year, and you can hear nesting pairs close to the trails all the time.
That's,
And I think for black-cap vireos, there's some similar stories I've heard too, where they nest right next to facilities. But obviously, they probably prefer that more natural habitat.
right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's that's pretty much all there is to that. Keeps that area a little bit more wild, gives the animals time to get away from people. Um, that our whole park is closed, except for holidays. It's closed Tuesday through Thursday every week. And if it rains, we're usually closed for an extra day or two or three, depending on how much rain we got. So we spent a lot of time being closed, which makes our job a bit easier. But sometimes we're not as popular with the locals or people who have come from far away to come visit us, and then we're closed. So we get,
Yeah.
every day that we're closed, we have a trail that stays open no matter what. So people have somewhere to go. But when people show up when we're closed, they can get a little salty sometimes. And that happens
Oh.
every day, but most people understand,
Yeah.
that it's a state natural area, not a state park, which is a real designation that the state gives to its properties. So, we are able to prioritize natural resource management over visitors.
Yeah.
So, um, I mean, not their safety, but their their visitor enjoyment.
Right.
That we're allowed to have that take a backseat, which somewhere like Guadalupe River State Park, they have to kind of switch that priority a bit.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of the threats and challenges with the Golden Cheek Warbler. How is urban development around San Antonio impacting the park and its conservation efforts?
Um, yeah, that's something we talk about quite a lot around here. So if you hop on Google Earth and zoom in on Government Canyon, there's a button on the top where you can enable historical imagery and slide it. And if you slide it from like the 90s to now, you can just see it getting closer and closer. So there used to be a buffer of ranches and stuff
Mhm.
around the park on most sides. Now that buffer now only exists on the far west side,
Mhm.
going away from town. So we literally have like giant dirt barren wastelands outside of our fences now that are turning into houses as we speak. So pretty much our entire fence line is houses at this point, or will be shortly. There's a new HEB even coming in just around the corner, on that more remote side.
Yeah, I live in the area, so
Oh, okay.
I know
Gotcha.
it's
Gotcha.
just insane, just the amount of housing
Mhm.
development that's going up. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So it does sort of concentrate wildlife into the park. So there could be increased competition in the park boundaries, or those animals kind of become a bit urbanized and they get a little too habituated to people. That's a big deal with deer, especially.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm sure you've
I
seen
live
that.
near Medina Lake, so when we
Mhm.
first moved here, I had a group of deer I could feed out of my hand. They just got used to me out, feeding them. So yeah, they
Yeah,
just get used to people being
yeah, and we do discourage that.
yeah.
Just for the record, there's several
Yes,
reasons, but
I had to stop because too many deer were coming into our yard for one. And
mhm.
then, of course, the bucks start coming in and they start fighting with each other. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be caught in the middle of that. So I haven't done that in a couple years and they've just kind of gone about their way.
Yeah. Um, so as far as that urban development goes too, there's also the noise pollution from all the construction. We already get
Yeah.
some noise pollution from all the planes, the military planes, and the airport.
Mm-hmm.
But just that constant drilling and banging and beeping and stuff. I've heard Golden Cheeked Warblers singing like 50 feet from a construction zone on the other side of the fence, and it was really sad. He was still doing his thing, but it was kind of disturbing to see that in person. Um,
Crazy.
so, urban development kind of goes without saying, start straight up habitat loss.
Yeah.
Um, but there is kind of a flip side to that. So if you know the La Cantera shopping area
Mm-hmm.
off I-10, um, right near Fiesta, Texas and stuff, that was built right on top of some high quality golden cheeked warbler habitat. And I'm not sure who owned it at the time. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
the city? I'm gonna guess the city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when it was purchased for development, part of the deal was they had to mitigate that by purchasing land to donate to Parks and Wildlife for the Golden Cheeked
Oh,
Warbler. And so that is one of our, I think it's maybe the second, no, it's probably the third or fourth additional property we acquired probably 15 or so years ago.
yeah.
I don't know the exact year, but we got a couple thousand acres out of that that are now protected in perpetuity. It's a hard word to say, in
Mm-hmm.
perpetuity because of La Cantera. So there is something to be said about habitat fragmentation, not just habitat loss, but like let's say you had 100,000 acres. It's going to be more effective for wildlife management as a single block than it is into 10,000 acre blocks.
Right.
Um, or divide that up as small as you want. You could still applies for 100 acre, 1,000 acre blocks, but um, you're increasing edge habitat around that. So each little square is going to have this edge that's going to have different composition than the middle. Um, that's going to encourage invasive species to show up, not just hogs, but like invasive plants, big time.
Yeah.
Johnson grass, Chinaberry trees. Um, and then any animal that wants to go from fragment to fragment has to go past traffic and not get run over. And then humans filling in the gaps in between are also making light and noise and trash and disease, wild feral dogs, feral cats, you name it. So um, all that habitat is better in one piece. So in the long run, since that area was already getting developed really hard, it's probably better for the birds to have this giant chunk of land over here and other wildlife to
Right.
have this giant chunk of land than it was to have that one over there just getting surrounded by all these smaller fragments. And that's a big conversation in the wildlife conservation world.
Yeah.
Connecting fragments is a big deal, whether with corridors
Mm-hmm.
or if you look at the Phil Hardberger Park land bridge,
Mm-hmm.
that's not even that big of a property, but it's big enough that connecting them can make a huge difference for wildlife. Birds are lucky that they can fly.
Yeah.
Now, they don't, stuff like a golden cheeked warbler is small, vulnerable, um, and a habitat specialist. So it's not going to be as excited to fly through an urban area as it would be flying through a ranch or something. But
Right.
uh, think about like snakes and small mammals and insects. They're going to have a lot harder time getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So, and of course, all that's interconnected.
Yeah. Discuss a little bit how climate change has changed the way you approach the warbler conservation.
Um, I wouldn't say that it's directly entered the conversation, at least on a decision-making basis, but it is part of the larger conversation on wildlife conservation in general, or just habitat management, land management. Of course, drought is going to severely affect
Yeah.
wildlife. They're thirsty, they're hungry, the plants are thirsty, making less food, there's less bugs to eat that food, and so on. Um, but there is also the you and in your questions you sent me, you mentioned prescribed fire. I don't know if we're going to get to that later or
You can talk
I'm
about it.
going now.
Yeah.
So part of that urban development, um, makes it harder for us to do prescribed fires. And I noticed in your questions you said controlled burns, but prescribed fire is the more accurate term that we want to use. Because it's not that we just had a fire and just kept it from going out of control. It's
Right.
prescribed. It is specific. It is planned. It has to have certain staffing, certain weather, certain equipment, wind direction, mixing speed of the wind, and all these things have to align. Um, and so when we do fires, it doesn't change the way we do them necessarily. We still have to notify the neighbors. We still have to maintain fire breaks, have the equipment. It's literally like an eclipse when the stars align and we can do this. So,
Yeah.
but
Imagine.
the urban development makes the risk higher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the risk of escapes or whatever, and the consequences of those mistakes could be more dire. If we set a neighborhood on fire, that is a much bigger deal than if we set a neighbor's ranch on fire.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously that's extremely rare. But we also it makes the prescription more narrow. So now we can only burn now if the wind is going to push that smoke away from town.
I see.
Um, and of course, many more neighbors who can send angry letters because they don't understand why we're doing prescribed fire. But prescribed fire helps us maintain that pre-settlement habitat composition, a savanna rather than just a thick wall of brush. It's
Right.
much more productive for wildlife food, more fresh growth that comes up. You should see how green a burned area gets.
Okay.
Like a month later, it's insane. Deer populations go up. Everything is happy. Bobwhite quail, which are declining, they love a good burn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tortoises, you name it. But for the people side and the climate change side, um, we're also reducing the risk of larger, more catastrophic wildfires. So we're reducing fuel, so those fires have potential to be smaller, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also the fact that they're planned in the first place means that when that fire is lit, whether it's contained or not, those people are there on site. The fire breaks are mowed to the ground. There are people with fire trucks ready to go,
Yeah.
foam sprayer things, all the stuff is there. Um, as opposed to, let's say we let this area get all thick with dead debris, fallen trees, grass and stuff. And let's say it was time for a burn, but we chose to stop burning. Now, when that does catch on fire, because it will, someone threw a cigarette out the window or lightning strike. Um, Someone left a car running in the grass. That's happened before. Um, so if that happens and no one's around because it's a random Tuesday,
Right.
then that's going to get big fast and it's going to go wherever it wants. So prescribed fire is a huge, huge, huge tool to keeping people safer and keeping the habitats healthier.
Of course.
But of course, climate change makes that harder and harder and harder. And so does the urban development. So
Yeah.
I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. Um, that fuel moisture has to be high enough for us to burn safely too. So
Mm.
if everything's a crisp already, then it's harder for us to burn.
Yeah.
Um, but luckily for me, all those decisions happened above my head, and I just had to be ready to go on the day with fire breaks mode and neighbors notified. That's my
Yeah.
main job.
What do? Y'all mail them a letter?
We do a whole bunch of Facebook posts. We do a bunch of newspaper ads, and then we do notifications. So all the city council will know, all the law enforcement, fire departments. Did I say city council?
Mhm.
Judges, like we go pretty almost overboard with notifications. I think year before last was probably like 150 notifications. This year was like 250 because of all the new houses. It's
Yeah.
probably going to be 350 next year before it tops out. More than any other park. I talked to the fire team and they were like, yeah, most parks do like 20 notifications.
Wow.
So it was like a week-long project with help to get all those letters. And each letter is three pieces of paper folded three times to fit
Right.
into that letter. So
Yeah.
it took forever to do those. And then I have to do them a month before fire season starts, which is November to April. And then if we don't burn by the halfway point, I have to do it again. And most years it doesn't get burned because it's very difficult. So I have to do 250 letters twice. Um, so that's a big deal. And then we have to run all the ads again and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we'll get like an occasional angry letter back or phone call trying to be like, what the heck are you guys doing? Setting this place on fire. I thought you were a natural area, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand. So,
I get it.
but the letter that we send includes all of that, like
Yeah.
where we're burning, when we're burning, why we're burning, all those details they could possibly want to know. So,
Yeah. We just have a few more minutes left, so I'll go with one more question. What outreach and education initiatives does the park use to inform visitors about this endangered species?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. We do have a park interpreter who's full time. Her name's Lisa Cole. She does a lot of programs in the spring, with the nice weather and stuff. So we will do occasional like Golden Cheeked Warbler walks. We did a painted bunting walk like a week ago, where
Oh,
people could be experienced birders, could be people who were new to wildlife or whatever, who just want to see this endangered bird in the wild. It's pretty easy to show someone a Golden Cheeked Warbler as long as
oh yeah,
you have good ears and good eyes. They're pretty easy to track down. It takes a little persistence sometimes to get it to show its face, but
yeah.
um, we do those programs. We have a lot of signage around on multiple different trails. Um, and we also do like a lot of social media posts. So every Thursday, me and Lindsay take turns doing posts about what the resource program is up to, and we'll include Golden Cheek stuff in there. And then every Wednesday, one of our customer service reps, she likes to do Wildlife Wednesday posts every
Oh, that's
Wednesday.
cool.
So she'll do the Golden Cheek Warbler, probably every year when it's that season.
Yeah.
Um, and we get pretty good viewership on those. Um, and there's lots of like resources and stuff available online for the public on TPWD's site. Um, but I will say probably the last major point on that is like volunteerism. So we get a lot of volunteers, people in the professional fields or just, you know, retired people who live nearby,
Yeah.
who are interested in doing the Golden Cheeked Warbler surveys with us.
Mm-hmm.
But we can only really have like six at a time. So, and they have to be trained. So,
Yeah.
um, usually we only get like a couple new ones every year, and a couple of them might step out, and then we have a bunch of regulars. So, um, unfortunately, like not that many people get to participate in it, but
Yeah.
some do. And there's all the other parks do this as well in our Hill Country region. So maybe it's a dozen or so parks that all do Golden Cheeked Warbler surveys. And it can have a small team of trained volunteers too. But um, volunteerism is a big part of our engagement anyway.
Yeah.
We can't do the projects we do without volunteers, and actually about half of our labor hours per year is volunteer hours.
Cool.
And the state values volunteer hours at $21 an hour. And they do that math every year. And it is an unbelievable amount of money that money, like invisible money, that
Yeah.
is saved by having these volunteers. It's really impressive. So, but that helps us not only get projects done that we need to get done, but helps to engage us with the local community. Those volunteers really care.
Yeah. I can imagine.
The vast majority, obviously, but um, that is a major part. But we do obviously use a ton of volunteers for our other projects, and a lot of our projects have indirect relationships to Golden Cheeked Warblers too.
Yeah, cool.
A lot of interpretive volunteers too. We have a lot of interpreters that lead programs that, Lisa just sets up the programs and lets the volunteers take care of the rest. So,
Yeah.
um, but that is probably our most direct form of
Awesome.
communication on that with the public. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's all the questions I have for today. I want to thank you again for all your time that you have given to me to do this interview. Your insights will definitely help with my class project, and I learned so much from you today. And I'll be emailing you to hopefully maybe I'll come out there and volunteer and
Yeah.
see what
Sounds
you
great.
guys do on a daily basis, okay?
Yeah, I'll look forward to it. If you happen to stop by, our office is right by the bathrooms, so
Okay,
we're
sounds
easy to
good.
track down.
So, cool. Thank you so much, Ryan.
All
I hope
right,
you
you're
have a
very
great
welcome.
day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.